and you gotta move around with security because you gotta move around with security because you a hoe. You gotta move around with security. In real street, don't move and take security guards. You gonna die.
To go down to another state and cause havoc or however he called this RICO is insane, man. Hey, I damn near spit out my coffee, man, when the judge said I was drinking some Dunkin' Donuts, man, and the judge said a state RICO, I damn near spit out my coffee.
You know, I don't know. I don't know what the elements are of the various offenses in Pennsylvania. If you're unsure of that and want to look into that a little bit further before you make decisions here, I'd be happy to continue this for a day or two, or...
That's okay. I really want to be there, man. I'm going to go there and get it over with.
All right, real good.
I kind of know what it's about. It's something that's brutal.
Breezy has been hit with a state RICO charge, man. He started to explain it on camera to the judge, but the judge said halt, and he waived his extradition, so he will be going to Pennsylvania to fight this RICO.
Welcome to the Gossip Channel. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We're growing with you and because of you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Once we hit that milestone, a special prize will be waiting for you. Stay tuned. And now, let's get into the topic. He might never see freedom again. And word on the street is, Breezy ain't planning to take this fall solo. Rumors say he's already lining up big names to shave years off his sentence. The whole story begins with the arrest that flipped everything upside down. On the morning of August 27, 2025, Antonio Valentino King, the world knows him as 600 Breezy, thought it was just another day. The Chicago drill rapper was rolling through Wisconsin when a simple traffic stop turned into pure chaos. By 7:30 a.m., cops discovered an active extradition warrant linked to Pennsylvania. In a split second, one of Drill's rawest voices was dragged into a storm that could wipe out his career for good. He was locked up, staring down charges that could keep him behind bars forever. And let's be real, this wasn't 600 Breezy's first dance with the law, not even close. Coming out of Chicago's Englewood, he's been walking the razor's edge between the streets and rap stardom for over a decade. His ties to the Black Disciples, especially the feared 600 set, shaped not only his music, but also the chaos trailing his name. Those same ties dragged him into Chicago's deadliest gang wars, turning every step into a headline. So when news broke of his arrest, the hip-hop world was stunned, but the ones who knew his history, not shocked at all. Court records show Breezy was booked with no bail, meaning Pennsylvania's case on him wasn't light work. It was deadly serious. What made this arrest feel so dark and dangerous? The online chatter. Fans on Reddit and street blogs started whispering that Breezy's case might be tied to a state-level RICO investigation. And that's no small thing. RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, is the government's deadliest weapon for smashing organized crime. When they throw RICO at rappers, it's because prosecutors believe they can prove the artist ain't just making music. He's moving like part of a full-on criminal network. And when Breezy finally showed up in court, his body language said it all. He looked like a man already bracing himself for the worst. But Breezy tried to brush it off, calling the charges something small, a move that clashed hard with the reality he was standing in. Nothing about this case screamed small. Extradition warrants don't just pop up for light charges, and being locked up with no bail, that's as serious as it gets. Even the judge warned him straight up, don't speak on the details because every word could come back to bury you later. That moment alone showed how heavy the situation really was, no matter how casually Breezy tried to play it. This arrest felt like the peak of a long, messy pattern that had haunted Breezy since the jump. His rap sheet stretches all the way back to 2012, when cops in Waterloo, Iowa, snatched him up during a multi-agency sting for crack cocaine possession with intent to deliver. That bust was the first domino, and once it fell, the legal system never let him breathe again. Probation violations stacked up, locking him in a cycle he couldn't escape. By 2017, the hammer really dropped. He got slammed with a 10-year sentence for leaving town without permission to perform in Houston and LA, and even for testing dirty on weed. Even though he only served 18 months thanks to legal maneuvers, the writing was on the wall. 600 Breezy just couldn't stay out of trouble. On top of that, his beefs in the rap game piled up receipts that could easily be used against him. The most explosive one, his never-ending war with Tekashi 6ix9ine. That feud went from petty shots to downright dangerous once 6ix9ine crossed the line and disrespected fallen Chicago rappers. Breezy wasn't laughing, he wasn't bluffing. He made it clear this was way bigger than internet talk. This wasn't your average rap beef. This was the kind of threat that law enforcement watches like hawks, especially when it's aimed at someone branded a federal informant like 6ix9ine. That online war didn't just stir drama, it landed 600 Breezy behind bars in December 2021 on terroristic threat charges, proof his internet persona had deadly real-world consequences. And the receipts, they weren't just saved by fans. Prosecutors tucked them away as solid evidence, ready to argue he was tied to violent criminal circles. The twist, by August 2025, when he got hit with that major arrest, Breezy had just been making headlines for condemning a mass shooting at Chicago rapper Mellow B's mixtape release party. The irony was wild. That shooting left 4 dead and 15 injured, and Breezy had actually gone online to denounce the madness. He tried to flip his image, speaking out against the senseless bloodshed and painting himself as a voice of reason in a culture constantly accused of glorifying violence. But now, he was staring down charges that tied him right back to the very chaos he claimed he wanted out of. His arrest also reignited the bitter fractures inside Chicago's drill scene, where rival factions never miss a chance to throw dirt. And just to twist the knife deeper, fellow Chicago rapper Lil Zay Osama jumped on social media to clown him, posting, "B Breezo, the streets ain't for you." The disrespect was loud. When the news of his arrest hit the media, it was clear. This wasn't just another headline. It was a turning point for the entire drill scene. What really caught people's attention was the gap between Breezy's laid-back attitude and the brutal reality of RICO charges hanging over his head. That clash became the main talking point everywhere, Breezy downplaying it like it was nothing, while the system was lining up a case heavy enough to crush his whole career. RICO charges don't just fall out of the sky. When the government pulls that card, it means they're convinced they can prove a whole pattern of criminal moves stretching across multiple crimes and possibly multiple people. So Breezy's Wisconsin arrest wasn't just another bump in the road. It looked like the start of the end for his freedom. With a track record stacked full of past cases, from Iowa to other states, this new bust carried the exact weight prosecutors love. A long history they could stitch together as proof that Breezy wasn't slipping up by accident. He was living in it. What made this whole mess even scarier was the sealed Pennsylvania warrant. Nobody, not even Breezy's own lawyers, knew what the exact charges were. That meant when they stepped into court, they'd be flying blind with zero chance to build a real defense until the state finally unsealed the case. The mystery alone cranked up the pressure, fueling wild speculation about what the government thought they could pin on one of Chicago's loudest drill voices. Digging deeper into Breezy's story, it's clear this wasn't just some random arrest. It felt like the inevitable crash of a life lived on razor's edge. Fame on one side, infamy on the other, spitting raw drill anthems while brushing shoulders with the law. That double life turned into a gamble he could never fully control. To understand how Breezy ended up here, staring at charges that could flip his whole world upside down, we gotta break down the dangerous world he was moving through as one of drill's most authentic players. This was never just about dropping tracks. It was about survival in a world where proving your authenticity could land you in a courtroom just as fast as on a stage. In drill, The line between entertainment and evidence blurred so much that lyrics could turn into exhibits overnight. Born April 16, 1991, Antonio, later known as 600 Breezy, grew up in the roughest corners of Chicago, where seeing 21 was a miracle in itself. Raised around the Black Disciples, especially the notorious 600 set, he was pulled into street politics before he even had a chance to escape. These were blocks where gunshots rang out louder than the ice cream truck, and survival meant choosing sides. On the 600 block, loyalty wasn't just talk, it was survival. Snitching could get you erased, and for Breezy, this wasn't some set he repped for clout. This was his bloodline, his shield, his whole identity. The Black Disciples, especially the 600 crew, weren't just homies to hang with. These were his day ones, the soldiers he'd ride for, the brothers who stood ready when the ops came sliding through. But like so many stories from Chicago's drill roots, Breezy's rise was stained with tragedy. His close friend and fellow 600 member, L.A. Capone, a young star in the making, was gunned down in 2013 at only 17 years old. Losing LA wasn't just losing a homie, it was losing family. That pain lit a fire under Breezy, fueling him to turn rap from a hustle into his mission. For real, Breezy wasn't rapping just to pass time anymore, he was carrying the weight of his fallen brother every time he touched the mic. When he dropped Don't Get Smoked in 2015, it wasn't just a track, it was a war cry straight out the trenches. The rawness, the uncut truth in those bars could only come from someone who actually lived that life, not some studio gangster pretending for clout. And the streets felt it heavy. The authenticity was undeniable. But here's the twist. Sometimes the grind in the hood gets hit with a curveball that flips the script. Out of nowhere, Drake, the sixth god himself, spun Don't Get Smoked on OVO Sound Radio in September 2015, blasting Breezy's voice from the block all the way into the mainstream. Picture this, you're a young dude off the 600 block grinding just to make a name, and suddenly the biggest rapper alive is blasting your song to millions. That's way more than a cosign. That's a stamp from the top of the mountain. The bond that formed between Drake and Breezy wasn't some fake industry handshake. It was real, recognized real, plain and simple. When Breezy speaks on Drake, you can hear the respect dripping in every word. Drake wasn't out here giving him clout for the cameras either. He was really putting in work behind the scenes, showing love to a Chicago day one in a way the industry rarely ever sees. Breezy understood something most young cats chasing the rap dream never figure out. You can't build a legacy off clout chasing or riding somebody else's wave. What made the bond with Drake hit different was that the respect went both ways, and Breezy never switched up his authenticity. He knew Chicago drill wasn't just a trend, it was raw culture, the kind of thing you couldn't fake if you tried. And the wildest part, Drake's love wasn't something Breezy begged for. He made it clear. He never asked for attention or a feature, yet Drake still reached out. That alone earned Breezy serious respect in the game. Respect from the Toronto legend meant everything. This wasn't some clout chase, it was real street-to-street recognition, and Drake made sure Breezy knew it. Breezy never tried to milk that bond for fame, but even as their friendship grew, he couldn't ignore the reality. The streets were always watching, always calling his name back to the chaos. That's where things started to twist, because Breezy's deep loyalty to his block and his grasp of street politics didn't always line up with Drake's polished diplomatic way of handling beef. Still, their bond reached a major peak in 2017 when Breezy laid down a spoken word outro on Drake's track, Lose You from the More Life Project. Getting your voice stamped onto a Drake album? That's more than a feature. That's history. That moment was like getting knighted by the rap gods themselves. Breezy's voice was suddenly echoing in living rooms, car stereos, and clubs worldwide. But here's where the whole story swerves left and makes you shake your head. While Breezy was climbing the ranks and linking with one of the biggest artists on earth, the system was quietly stacking a case meant to crush him. Because truth is, when you come from where Breezy came from, the game's rigged from day one. and success only paints a bigger target on your back. Way back in 2012, when Breezy was just 21 and still trying to figure out his lane, the Tri-County Drug Enforcement Task Force teamed up with Waterloo PD's tactical unit to raid 6 different spots in the city of Waterloo. Antonio Valentino King got snatched up at 1013 West Mullen Avenue in Waterloo, Iowa, hit with a possession with intent to deliver crack cocaine charge. Now, holding a little work is one thing, but getting bagged with enough for them to think you're hustling heavy, that's a whole different league of trouble. This wasn't just a possession case. This was the type of charge that could bury you for a decade or more. But Breezy caught a break most dudes in his shoes never see. He pled guilty and got slapped with a 10-year sentence. But it was suspended, flipped into 5 years of probation instead. Even better, his probation got transferred to Illinois, where he was living. That gave him a shot to chase his career while still technically under the system's thumb, but at least not sitting in a cell. Back then, it felt like divine intervention. A second shot to chase his rap dreams without constantly ducking cops. But anyone who's been caught in that system knows probation ain't freedom. It's just a leash. And for a young hustler trying to climb in the music game, that leash feels way too short. By early 2017, with only 3 months left on his 5-year probation, Iowa Corrections came down hard, claiming King had violated the terms. The violations, moves that every rapper chasing the bag makes. Breezy left Illinois without permission to perform shows at music venues. What seemed like regular business for an artist was now painted as defiance, threatening to blow up everything he'd been building. Specifically, Breezy hit the IVA Center in Houston, Texas in October 2016, then slid to Lure in Los Angeles that December. Social media posts even showed him popping up in New York, Oakland, and East Atlanta, all without approval, all stacking up as violations. It was the ultimate catch-22. The man was finally winning, getting booked in major cities, building a real fan base, and securing the bag. But every single step towards success was technically breaking probation. And that wasn't all. King had already tested dirty for weed in both 2015 and 2016, adding fuel to the fire. By the time Iowa came calling, Breezy had no choice but to drive back and face the music. In a now-deleted Facebook post, he vented his frustration, pointing out that his Chicago probation officer hadn't flagged the trips. But Iowa officials, they made sure every move was counted against him. After 5 years of grinding, Breezy stepped back into Iowa furious. He wrote, "This long-ass drive to Waterloo. I'm about to walk in court on straight asshole mode. Because if I've been violating for traveling, that means I'm violating just by coming to court. And the crazy part, my supervising PO in Chicago didn't violate me. Iowa did. After 5 years. Now, Iowa won. Here was a young man who'd been working nonstop to flip his life, staying out of major trouble, feeding his family, and building a legit career through music. But the system didn't care about growth, didn't care about progress. They wanted to make an example out of him. The same success that should have been celebrated was twisted into evidence, and Breezy knew on that drive to Iowa that his freedom and his future were both on the line.
Newspaper for XXX allegedly having something to do with that, which I doubt. I testified that he ain't did no shit like that. But he been in a lot of cases that's open, that's big, like the XXX is big. So, you know, he
good at fan base, like especially where he from, like they riot for that man. So tell him, be, you know, he ain't like, we come from Chicago where this, we started from rap beef. They just get on, come right out of this rap beef. Really, they homies really dying for the all that shit. Real, a lot of shit for me behind the scenes, you know. Like I don't really, he make me want to care about the rap shit. I don't care.
I know the
Yeah, you don't want to get into the facts of it. Somehow it could potentially get used against you later.
stuff that I really want to get it there and I'm gonna go there and get it over with.
All right, real good.
I kind of know what it's about, and it's something that's really.
Breezy had no idea how fast his world was about to flip. The courtroom he was walking into wasn't just another stop. It became the stage for one of the most controversial sentences hip-hop had seen in years. The ripples hit the culture hard, testing not just Breezy's strength, but also the loyalty of everyone who swore they had his back, even that famous friend from Toronto. This was the true moment when keeping it real went wrong. June 2nd, 2017 was supposed to mark the end of Breezy's legal headaches, the day he finally closed that chapter and stepped fully into his role as a rising star in drill. Instead, it turned into the day the system flexed its power, reminding everyone that America runs on two brands of justice, one for the privileged and another for young black men from the hood who dared to dream bigger than the block they came from. When Breezy stepped into that Waterloo, Iowa courtroom, he thought it was routine, maybe a lecture, maybe stricter rules, but nothing that would take out the momentum he'd been building. Judge Andrea Dreyer had a whole different idea. She ruled that King had broken probation with unauthorized travel and dirty drug tests, then dropped the hammer, revoking his probation and slapping him with the full 10-year prison sentence from his 2012 case. 10 years for performing shows and smoking weed. Let that sink in. The news ripped through the hood like a drive-by. The one forced to deliver the blow? King's mother, Renita King, who broke down on Facebook. Iowa just locked up Antonio Valentino King for 10 years. This is the worst birthday of my life. The system didn't just punish Breezy, it shattered his family too. A mother's heartbreak spilled raw onto Facebook, unfiltered for the world to see. Because she needed people to understand the weight of what had just been done to her son. But Breezy, he wasn't going out quiet. Even locked behind bars, his voice carried the same fiery defiance that had made him a star in the first place. In one phone call from the county, which spread through the streets like wildfire, you could hear it all. The pain in his tone, but also the iron determination. This wasn't some hollow talk. Breezy knew something the critics didn't. He had an ace in his back pocket, the kind of lifeline most defendants could never dream of. Real loyalty only shows when the pressure's on, and Drake proved he wasn't just an industry buddy. He was a true friend with real weight behind him. When Breezy got slammed with that 10-year sentence, Drake didn't just send condolences. He moved like family, putting his money where his mouth was. A leaked text, allegedly from Drake, showed just how deep his frustration ran. They took him in, revoked his probation, and gave him 10 years. He won't have to do it, but basically locked him up for smoking weed and being black. That raw statement cut through the noise, exposing how unfair the whole situation felt. Drake's camp even made it clear they'd help lock down top-tier legal muscle for Breezy, a rare kind of loyalty in an industry where most people vanish when things get messy. His support also shined a harsh light on the racial dynamics at play, proving this case was bigger than just probation violations. The whispers of racial bias were loud, maybe not something that could be proven in court, but it echoed what the streets believed. Breezy was being made an example of because he was a young black man who made it out the hood, but refused to cut ties with where he came from. Still, his confidence about beating the case wasn't just tied to having powerhouse lawyers. Breezy knew how the system really moved. With the right connections and resources, you could flip the script, and he believed he had both. That prediction turned out to be dead on, proving Breezy understood the game deeper than most gave him credit for. By February 2018, the receipts showed he wasn't wrong. King's attorney, Tina Muhammad, went to bat with a motion to reconsider his sentence, stressing that Breezy was actually a contributing member of society thanks to his growing music career. Shockingly, the motion worked, and on December 12, 2018, Breezy walked free after serving less than a year behind bars. But freedom in America doesn't erase the target on your back, especially if you're a young black man with a record. The harassment didn't stop. The system wasn't through with 600 Breezy, not even close. And what made things even more dangerous? Breezy's own words, interviews, and online antics had built a paper trail so thick that prosecutors could dig through it any time, ready to twist his past into ammo for a future case. The fact that Breezy's name kept popping up in connection with multiple high-profile cases even when it was just media chatter, showed how his image was constantly tied to heavy criminal activity. And that's exactly the type of pattern prosecutors salivate over when they're cooking up a RICO case. They don't need to prove you pulled the trigger or moved every brick yourself. All they need is to paint you as part of the organization that did, and then show you gained from it or played a role in the bigger criminal machine that's enough to bury someone for years. The depth of 600 Breezy's legal mess gets even clearer once you factor in all the times he's made statements that could be twisted into straight-up admissions of criminal activity. That's why when people hear whispers of RICO tied to his name, the shock is real. Because those charges aren't just heavy, they can carry life sentences, especially for someone with Breezy's rap sheet. Prosecutors don't just look at crimes themselves, they study the whole pattern, the behaviors, the network, the loyalty, and in Breezy's case, that stretches back years. Even something as simple as giving shout-outs to locked-up associates can be flipped into proof of structure and loyalty, the exact kind of framework prosecutors use to convince a jury there's a criminal enterprise at play. The most dangerous twist in 600 Breezy's case is that his success, the very thing that should have saved him, might actually arm the prosecutors instead. His confidence about beating charges, paired with casual nods to organizational loyalty, makes it easy for the state to paint him as a man who thought he was untouchable, moving above the law. Even the Drake connection, which Breezy often pointed to as proof of support and strength, could backfire in a RICO trial. Sure, it showed he had top-tier backing for lawyers and money moves, but to prosecutors, it also screamed that this so-called organization had both mainstream legitimacy and serious resources. That kind of narrative can turn celebrity into courtroom ammo real quick. What makes this case a potential career monster for 600 Breezy isn't just the looming RICO threat. It's the weight of his entire record crashing down at once. From the 2012 drug bust to the 2017 probation violation to multiple run-ins in Alabama and Iowa, and now the sealed Pennsylvania charges, prosecutors can stitch it all together into one ugly timeline. A narrative that paints Breezy not as a rapper who slipped up here and there, but as a career criminal who just happened to find fame. And the wildest part? He wasn't even caught in some big raid. He got snatched during what looked like a simple traffic stop. That alone hints at how closely law enforcement had been watching him, just waiting for the green light to pounce. This kind of surveillance usually means more than cops lurking. We're talking potential wiretaps, deep dives into financial records, and a full-blown investigation already in motion. And with multiple law enforcement agencies moving in sync, the pressure only got heavier. The sealed Pennsylvania charges left 600 Breezy's legal team walking into court blind. No roadmap, no clear picture of what they were even up against. That kind of disadvantage is deadly in a RICO fight, where cases usually stretch back years, involve multiple defendants, and stack conspiracy on top of conspiracy. What this really shows is how all the conflicts and allegations tied to Breezy's name have been pieced together into one massive web, the kind prosecutors love to spin. Every past slip-up, every headline, every association feeds into their claim that he was part of an ongoing criminal machine. And the whispers about him flashing guns, that only adds fuel to the fire. From funerals to beefs with rival rappers, 600 Breezy's public moves kept feeding the exact story prosecutors wanted to tell. That he wasn't just a rapper, but an active player in a violent organization. Every time he flashed a weapon, every online threat, every link to known street figures became another puzzle piece prosecutors could lock into their RICO case. Now, as Breezy waits on extradition to Pennsylvania, the weight of it all is impossible to ignore. This ain't just another charge you beat with sharp lawyers and a few celebrity cosigns. If the RICO whispers prove true, he's staring down the kind of airtight prosecution that's buried whole organizations and sent their leaders away for decades. For a man who once bragged he'd be back on the streets in 10 months or less, the possibility of RICO charges hit like a cold slap of reality. This was the price of a lifetime spent walking the razor's edge, trying to stay authentic while dodging criminal liability. The kid from Chicago's South Side, who made a name by keeping it real, might have finally learned the hardest truth. In the eyes of federal prosecutors, being too real can strip you of everything. As this saga keeps unfolding, one fact stands tall. 600, Breezy's arrest marks the end of an era for drill. It feels like a final reckoning for a generation of rappers who built their names at the crossroads of street credibility and mainstream fame. Whether Breezy walks free or gets buried by the system, one thing's clear. The game that made him is never gonna be the same again. Thanks for rocking with me. If you thought this breakdown on 600 Breezy was wild, smash that subscribe button to the Gossip Channel. Drop a like below and light up the comments with your thoughts. And don't dip yet. Check out the other bangers popping up on your screen right now. They're just as crazy. I'll catch you in the next video. Stay woke.